Mahip.
Good morning, ma'am. Good morning, sir.
Please go ahead.
Honorable.
Good morning, everyone.
Honorable Director, ma'am, School of Social Sciences, dignities of Indira Gandhi National Open University, respected Program Coordinator of Center for Gandhi and Peace, Professor Satish Kumar, sir, Studies Excellencies, eminent scholars, distinguished guests, honorable delegates, esteemed researchers, learners and students, all the viewers, listeners and participants from the different parts of the globe, ladies and gentlemen. It is with immense pleasure and honor that we introduce ourselves as the Center for Gandhi Studies in the Gandhi National Open University in New Delhi. IGNOU is the National Resource Center for Open and Distance Learning with international recognition and presence, has constantly endeavored to build an inclusive knowledge society through inclusive education. It provides access to higher education to all the segments of society by offering high quality, innovative and learner-centric programs, skills, upgradation and training to all by using latest technologies and methodologies at different level to all the learners. In the similar spirit and interest, Center for Gandhi Studies became the first center of School of Social Sciences to launch online modular programs consisting of master, PG diploma and certificate courses, as well as certificate program in peace studies and conflict management through ODL mode as well as online mode since July 2020. Center for Gandhi and Peace Studies offer unique modular programs of Gandhi and Peace Studies, aims to impart in-depth knowledge, insights, and intellect about Gandhiji, Gandhi perspective, interpretation and adoption of his thought and ideas for the empowerment of entire humankind. The major focus of the program is to critically analyze the viability and application of Gandhi's vision in the present fast-changing world. On behalf of Center for Gandhi and Peace Studies, I, Mahip, welcome you all to participate in this very interesting, fascinating, erudite and very insightful, distinguished lecture on relevance of Gandhi in post-COVID-19 world today. A warm welcome to Honorable Chief Guest, Professor Madhav Das Nalapat sir, who will deliver the lecture today. Professor Madhav Nalapat sir, who holds the UNESCO Peace Chair at the Department of Geopolitics and International Relations at Manipal University, Manipal. Sir is considered India's first professor of geopolitics, Vice Chair of the Manipal Advanced Research Group. Professor Nalapat sir is a professor, philosopher and ideologue who has defined India's new nationalism since the 1980s. He believes in and promotes India as a global power. His mantra is India first. A gold medalist in economics from Bombay University, his academic career began as a fellow of the Center for Political Research in 1974. 4 years later, he moved to business management, taking over an executive director of the Madhubhumi Printed and Publishing Company Limited. In 1984, he switched to the editorial side, taking over an editor of the Mathrubhumi Daily and the Mathrubhumi Illustrated Weekly. In 1989, Sir shifted from Malayalam to English language journalism, became the resident editor of one of the most popular national dailies, Times of India. He also worked as chief of the news bureau in 1995-1997. He has contributed to leading publications throughout the world and has written a number of books. In 2000, Professor Nalapat sir organized the first non-official India-China conference in which serving members of the armed forces of both the countries participated. Since 1998, he has visited China several times. In December 2003, he was part of the India team at the India-China Roundtable organized by the University of Hong Kong. Professor Nalapat sir's original theories include the India-China-Russia Trilateral Alliance, Wahhabism as the main security threat of the future, Hindutva or Indian as the composite of Muslim, Hindu and Christian civilizations, the concept of proxy nuclear state, the need in students' curriculum for a horizontal rather than the traditional vertical or graded view of the different societies, and the concept of the Asian NATO. Sir is a noted media personality and well-known academician. As an director of the group, Prof. Nalapat sir brings in a formidable package of experience and a skill. He is closely associated with Network Sunday newspaper, the Sunday Guardian, and contributes regularly. His writings have also featured exclusively in other newspapers across the globe, including the Asian Wall Street Journal, the Far Eastern Economic Review, CNN, and China Daily. Sir is currently an esteemed member of the advisory board of the London-based quarterly journal, The Conservative. He has developed several concepts in geopolitics, including that of the 21st century, Anglosphere, the proxy nuclear state, Asian NATO. He has been credited for launching the country's first India-centric international relations program at Manipal University. Sir has great interest in father of our nation, Gandhi ji, his thoughts, perspective, and vision. Honorable Sir, we are immensely grateful and highly appreciating your recent presence to share your views and ideas, vision and vision with us on this auspicious occasion of Gandhi Jayanti celebration 2021 by IGNOU. A big thanks for accepting our invitation and for giving your prompt consent to be the chief guest of this virtual meet. Sir, we are truly grateful to you for managing your time and amid your extremely busy schedule of duties and responsibilities to university in particular and the nation in general. It is great honor for the Center for Gandhi and Peace Studies to have sir with us to dignify our program today. We are highly thankful to all the dignitaries and distinguished participants of today's program who are also sharing their time with us in this event. It is a very nice gesture, much appreciated, that they prefer to devote their invaluable time with us over other commitments in their personal, public, social, and professional obligations to render stimulation and appreciation to the IGNOU extended family across the globe. I would like to express my most sincere gratitude to each and every of you for your presence and participation in this Gandhi Distinguished Lecture Ceremony as the gateway to the initiation to our academic deliberation. Thank you so much. Jai Hind. Now we have with us our respected program coordinator of model programs of Gandhi and Peace Studies, Professor Satish Kumar sir. I would like to say a few words about Professor Satish Kumar sir that would help us to know about him and his academic expertise and excellence closely to get benefited optimally. Professor Satish Kumar sir is Professor of Political Science and International Relations in the School of Social Sciences at our university. Sir is Program Coordinator of Model Programs in Gandhi and Peace Studies and Certificate Program in Peace Studies and Conflict Management. He worked as Associate Professor in the Center for International Relations, Center Jharkhand, Ranchi. He served as a professor and was the head of Department of Political Science at the Central Institute of Haryana, Mahendragarh. As part of his administrative experience, he served as the Dean of the School of Arts, Humanities, and Social Sciences and was the Chief Doctor at the Central Institute of Haryana. He was a member of Executive Council as well as Academic Council of the Central Institute of Haryana, Mahendragarh. Professor Kumar sir has major fields of academic interest are international relations and area studies, politics, society, and culture of South Asia, Central Asia, Indo-Pacific, and Southeast Asia, India's foreign policy, national defense, security, and
Dr. Mahit, that is enough.
Studies and
that is enough. Please invite the director, honorable director.
Research articles in national dailies, Hindi and English both regularly. Now I would like to invite respected director ma'am, please say a few words. Director of SOSS, Professor Rasmi Sinha ma'am.
Thank you, Mahit. Namaskar. Good morning to all on a bright, pleasant day. At least I am feeling it's a very bright, nice morning today. A hearty welcome to our distinguished and illustrious guest, Professor Madhav Das Nalapat, UNESCO Peace Chair, Manipal University, Manipal, and all the enthusiastic August gathering online. As you all know, Center for Gandhi and Peace Studies is housed in School of Social Sciences, is organizing distinguished lecture series programs as a part of Gandhi Jayanti celebration 2021, and it is heralding with the insightful on relevance of Gandhi in post-COVID-19 by our illustrious Professor Nalapat. The center has an academic program on Gandhi and Peace Studies with the objective of promoting both theoretical and applied research in Gandhi studies. The pivot of the program is to expose the learners, especially our younger ones, younger generation to the thoughts and ideas of Gandhiji, of whom they have just read about, and the place the place of his thoughts in the globalized world today. Factors of globalization have created an opportunity to look for an alternative mode. Program is designed to facilitate the learner to develop skills required for understanding Gandhian approach to peace from interdisciplinary perspective. COVID-19 has created immense and intense upheaval across the globe and has actually reminded the imperative and understanding of Gandhi. The pandemic has created uncertainty in all walks of life and threat to human existence. Today's lecture by such a renowned personality would definitely give us some food for thought, and I'm very confident that it will definitely help us and will be benefited by his thoughts, his insight on this COVID-19 pandemic, Gandhian thought. Welcome, Professor Nalapat, and thank you so much for giving us this opportunity actually for expressing your thoughts on our platform. Thank you and welcome once again.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your kind words and insightful ideas and thought, wisdom and vision. I would like to request our program coordinator, Professor Satish Kumar, sir, please deliver introductory remark.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Mahib. It is a rare opportunity for all of us to have Professor MD Nalapat, because I have known him for the last 10 years, and on many occasions, wherever I have been invited him as a speaker, and wherever he went, he impressed the large crowd with his thought. So again, this is an opportunity for all of us who are associated with the center, as a student, as a teacher, as a director, and as a coordinator, to get benefited from his thoughts. He's a very forceful speaker, as Dr. Mahib has narrated his CV. It's only 5-10%. His voices are being heard across the section in India, and that is that the policymakers take him very seriously, and that is why I have been following his writings in different newspaper. You will also, from today onwards, many of us would start liking his writings, which are available on the website. So without killing any moment, this is an opportunity for all of us to listen as much as possible to Professor Nalapat. That is a lot of learning. So I will request Dr. Mahib to invite our distinguished speaker and give him full unlimited time, whatever he wants to speak, to get benefited from his thought. And whenever it's possible, let's invite our distinguished speaker physically to our university. And we have many opportunities, because IGNOU in the pandemic has become the benchmark for reaching out to the large section of the society within India and out of India through his inputs and online education system. So, Dr. Mahib, please invite our distinguished speaker.
Thank you so much, sir, for your right and valuable words. Now, not making any much delay, I would like to request our chief host of the day, Professor Madhav, sir, please deliver the distinguished lecture. Sir, please.
Thank you, Mahim, and thank you, Director Sinha, and my very dear friend Satish Kumar, for this invitation. It's an honor to be here in the Indira Gandhi National Open University, which is training young minds to be the contributors and champions of tomorrow. It's an honor to be here, and I thank you. Now, we are talking about the relevance of Gandhian thought in the 21st century. We are now in 2021. And what are the main characteristics of the period in which we are in? Some of these characteristics have continued from the past. Some of them, such as COVID-19, are new. But what are the main characteristics? One, which is really quite pervasive, is the reality that it is not so much peace as conflict that is the norm in so much of our society. You can have conflicts. We talk of low intensity conflicts, which are basically kinetic conflicts involving guns and other weapons. But the reality is that you can have low intensity conflicts even in the nuclear family. You can have low intensity conflicts in small groups of people, among 5 or 6 individuals who are together. Maybe there's a conflict between them in terms of ideas, a clash not only of ideas, sometimes a physical clash. You have conflicts of larger groups. You have conflicts within regions, conflicts within countries, and conflicts between countries. So unfortunately, or the reality of this century, and frankly several previous centuries, is that conflict has become the norm rather than peace. Now, as Professor Kumar knows very well, I have long argued that universal peace is a fundamental human right. We talk about fundamental human rights, freedom of expression, freedom of lifestyle, and various other fundamental human rights, freedom to choose our leaders. But the reality is that universal peace is also a fundamental human right. But of course, the very important fact is that this is unlikely to be a reality that we are going to experience anytime in the future. Hopefully, the young people here, by the time you reach, for example, my age, I hope that you will be able to succeed, where unfortunately my generation seems to have failed. So the first point is conflict has become the norm, remains the norm, if I may say so. It has long been the norm, it remains the norm in human society. The second point, which is very important, is that we are looking at economics today, and we are looking at the drivers of economic growth and economic expansion. There was the age, if I may say so, the manufacturing age, the chemical age, and today is the age of the knowledge industry. If you look at the large companies of the world, large companies in different countries in the world, including in India, you have very large companies, huge companies that have grown in about 15 years from almost nothing to huge enterprises. It is because they are founded on knowledge. And they are founded on, in fact, nothing but knowledge. You may have 5 or 6 people who got together in a garage and created a company which in 5 years became a $5 billion company, which in 15 years became a $50 billion company. They started in a garage, and the only capital they had was their knowledge. Plus, the most important blessing that we have got today, which is access to the internet, access to bandwidth, and therefore the ability to disseminate our ideas, our thoughts, our dreams, and our activities across the world. So this is the knowledge industry that is a very important component of our daily lives. Now, I'm saying all this because I want to come back to the relevance of Gandhian thought in all this. Of course, here you have now the Covid-19 pandemic. And the Covid-19 pandemic illustrates a fundamental truth of the thought that is embraced by Mahatma Gandhi. And it is a very clear rule. No one is safe from COVID until everyone is safe from COVID. So that is where, for example, some countries that are hoarding vaccines, well, they are finding themselves still in the grip of COVID. Why? Because COVID can come from offshore. COVID can come from different locations. Way back, during the time when George W. Bush was president of the United States, he understood that a large number of American citizens were traveling to Africa, and many of them were coming back with HIV, AIDS, and then what happened? He wanted to create a program in which HIV was conquered in Africa. He tried very hard to use American pharmaceuticals. It didn't work. It was too expensive. Finally, Indian therapeutics stepped into the breach. And because of Indian therapeutics, the AIDS epidemic, if I may say so, has now become manageable in the sense that AIDS, which was a 100% killer disease, and let me remind you, COVID-19 at its worst is a 3% killer disease. 97% of people it does not kill. The overwhelming majority of people may not even know that they had COVID. About 3% at the worst die of COVID. AIDS, 100% used to die. Almost 100% used to die, except in some cases where the AIDS lasted a very, very long time, and therefore, the natural course intervened. But Indian pharmaceuticals weren't there, and that is where it is an example of the reality that you can't wall yourself off from the rest of society, from the rest of the world, from the rest of people around you. We are all linked together. As John Donne says, no man is an island. And pardon me, no man, and certainly no lady is an island, entire unto himself or herself. Each man or each lady's death diminishes us. So that was John Donne. Wherever in the world you have a death taking place, in some way, we are equally diminished by that. As there is a saying, and my introduction has focused a lot about China. The reality is, for the last 35 odd years, 30 years, I would say, I have been interested in two countries, United States and China. I have visited both countries very frequently, and it seems now that that particular path of mine, today China and the US are the two superpowers of the world. But there was an ancient saying that even if a butterfly flutters its wings somewhere, it has an impact on the world. The world changes. And that is true. The world changes. So COVID-19 has taught us the interdependence of mankind. Conflict is teaching us the sad reality that conflict is not the answer to the solutions that are needed to save mankind. Let me give you an example from geopolitics, because geopolitics has been a favored subject of mine for study for a very, very long time. Now, you have, for example, tension across the Taiwan Straits between Taiwan and the People's Republic of China. There are voices in the People's Republic of China that say, we have got a much bigger army, air force, navy, we have got atomic weapons, the Taiwanese don't have, let's go in and take over Taiwan. Well, from the defense point of view, that's not going to be easy, because the Taiwanese are now pretty well guarded, and they can do immense damage to the east coast of China, which is where modern China is. You remove the east coast from China, China becomes a very underdeveloped country. But apart from that, the reality is that Taiwan has been very helpful to China in the knowledge sphere. You look at Taiwanese tech, look at chip manufacturing, you look at all the knowledge industries. Most of them have come from three countries, Taiwan, Japan, and the United States, principally from Taiwan. So let us say, for example, that, and God forbid, I would not like to see that happen. I do not want to see conquest by physical force anywhere. But God forbid, if the PLA were to take the control of Taiwan, what do you think will happen to these Taiwanese the knowledge repositories? These people who are, in a sense, bank deposits of immense knowledge, of technical knowledge. Well, they will either leave the country, or they will certainly not work for a cruel conqueror. And as a consequence, China, which is today getting the benefit of so much of Taiwanese knowledge and so much of Taiwanese expertise, will lose that. Now, this happened, for example, in the 1939-45 war. You had an individual, a psychotic individual named Adolf Hitler, and he went on a mission of destruction of society, and in fact, he went on a mission of genocide towards the Gypsies and the Jewish people in Germany and in those parts of Europe he conquered. Well, these were, in terms of culture, the Gypsy people were among the most free expression and the most varied expressions of culture. And they really enriched every society that they were part of, and they still enrich them in Europe to this day. And the Jewish people were leaders of knowledge and the intellectual sphere. And what happened? Because of this genocide, fortunately, at least some of the most talented people in Germany, that is this community, were enabled to leave. And they went to the United States. And guess what happened? They helped the United States develop the atom bomb. Hitler could never develop the atom bomb. Well, one of the reasons being that he committed genocide on some of the best brains involved in the atomic program. He stopped many books from being read because they were written by people whom he said, oh, these people should not be read. Well, frankly, I'll tell you, I am a very eclectic kind of individual. I read different types of books. I access different types of ideas. I meet different types of people. And I think that is the core of the knowledge society. Whereas Hitler blocked that. And as a consequence, what happened was that inevitably and thankfully, he lost the war. So I only want to say that if you are thinking in terms of conquering by force, if you're thinking in terms of physically overawing another person, please understand that this is like a rubber band. You pull it and you pull it, but the minute your fingers slip, the band comes back again. You can only, if I may say so, win over people by what Mahatma Gandhi said, soul force, or the force of good. Of course, let us be very clear about all that. Let us be very clear and understand that, I mean, at least in my view, we have to understand that Mahatma Gandhi talked about certain broad principles. And it's not that every one of his tactical actions is something to be emulated or followed without adjustment to take account of realities of society as we are today. But the broad principles were very, very accurate. And the broad principle was, if you cooperate willingly, you get somebody to cooperate willingly, that is far more valuable than getting someone to cooperate by the threat of force. I think, I'm sure many of you here would have been witness to some of the ancient stories of India. I am a little dismayed that many of these stories are not yet in our school and college curricula. I can't understand why. They are universal stories. The whole world should study them. But that was a story of two kings. And one king had very heavy taxation. And the other king had very light taxation. And the king that had heavy taxation, when suddenly a war was thrust upon him, people just refused to really help him. They refused to pay more taxes. They said, why should we care? He's oppressing us. Whereas the king was not oppressor, who had a light taxation, who had a beneficent rule, people came forward in their tens and hundreds of thousands to help him to defeat the enemy. So this is the point. This is the, if I may say so, the core of Gandhian philosophy. And at the same time, I want to add the caveat. Now, I think as Professor Singh knows, many people talk about Vaasudeva Kutumbakam as something from ancient India. That Vaasudeva Kutumbakam, and may I remind you that Vaasudeva Kutumbakam comes from the Hitopadesa. Again, this is a collection of fables which I am astonished is not really taught in Indian schools. It's not taught anywhere. It should be taught everywhere because they are so useful, even in the modern world. And what was the Hitopadesa fable involving Vaasudeva Kutumbakam? As I recall, it was a crow, it was a deer, and it was a fox. And the fox wanted to eat the deer. So the fox invited the deer to the fox's lair and said, why don't you come? I am your friend, I am your buddy. Look how nice I am to you. And the crow, who liked, frankly, the deer, warned the deer, be careful, this gentleman, this fox is not up to any good. He wants to eat you up. And then the fox replied, Vaasudeva Kutumbakam, we are all one family. So please come to my lair. Well, the reality is that, yes, humanity is one. All of us are one. And you have referred to my theory of Hindutva. I am proud of that theory. The cultural DNA of India comprises the Vedic, the Mughal, and the Western. All three strands of DNA are in every one of us. And all three strands are valid and relevant to the present day. But I would like to say that obviously, if the deer had believed that there is, because of Vaasudeva Kutumbakam, the deer can trust the fox and go to the lair of the fox, well, the deer would not have lasted very long. So there are exceptions to every rule. And when you have a saintly individual, the saint will not sometimes recognize these exceptions. Mahatma Ji was a saint, an amazing saint. As I think Albert Einstein said, generations to come will scarce believe that such a man as this in flesh and blood ever walked the earth. It is true. Generations to come would scarce believe that you had a saint in human form in the person of Mahatma Gandhi. But I think one of the issues regarding some elements of Gandhian tactics is that he, in a sense, assumed that every single human being at any point in time could somehow become the inner goodness that is, of course, there in every human being. I mean, I believe we are a compound of good, we are a compound of bad, we are a compound of in between, all of us. So there is neither a good person or a bad person, but we are all part of that. And it depends on our social conditioning, it depends on our teaching, it depends on how we react ourselves, that how much of the good comes out, how much of the bad comes out. And in my view, part of the bad, again, is a very important point of Gandhian teaching. You will remember, Mahatma Gandhi had an extremely Spartan and frugal life. When he passed away from this world because of the way he was assassinated, he left behind some glasses, a few books, some wooden sandals, nothing virtually, almost nothing. He was perfectly happy with something which I think, today, in today's money, I would say it will be less than about 1 lakh of rupees. The total possessions that Gandhiji left behind would probably be worth 1 lakh of rupees. Of course, I'm not talking of the antiquity value, which is priceless, but the so-called market value if it belonged to someone else. So this was Gandhiji, and this is what the point is. You have, for example, each time you look at some of these business magazines globally and everywhere else, you see people who have got 100,000 crores, 200,000 crores, 300,000 crores, whatever. Well, I would have more respect for people who, in a sense, help people across the board, who give, let us say, 100,000 jobs, 1 million jobs, who with the 100,000 crores that they got in the bank, spend 75,000 crores of that for scholarships for young people who need to go and possibly get educated in locations where the education may not be in India, where the education may not be low cost. I would respect that more, but that is not the situation. Why? Because it is perceived, I hope it's not true, that the respect is much more for you depending on the number of zeros that you have to your bank account. Now, I mean, the number of individuals that you remove from poverty, you remove from pain, you remove from other travails, well, I think that is a much better indicator of the kind of person you are. And that should be an indicator of how much society respects you. And I think if you go by the thought of Mahatma Gandhi, you will join Mahatma Gandhi in respecting such people. And that is extremely important to understand, that it's not the possession that counts, it's what you do with it and how you share it, as has correctly been said most recently by Prime Minister Modi in his talk to the leaders of the summit that he was in, at the UN General Assembly. In a sense, Gandhiji had the concept of trusteeship. Now, it's a perfect concept. It's an ideal concept. But again, the reality is not everybody follows that concept. And as a consequence, sometimes if you assume somebody follows that concept, you may have a problem. As for example, his advice to the British public, and that advice he made public. And that advice was, welcome Hitler into your homes. Welcome German soldiers into your homes. And then through soul force, you will change them. Well, a lot of German soldiers during the time of Hitler entered a lot of homes in Europe. And I can assure you that soul force did not work on them at all. So I'm only saying that I admire, love, and respect and cherish the thoughts and ideals of the father of the nation. Do I believe that every one of his decisions and actions are applicable? I may not. But the concepts, the foundation of Gandhian thought is extremely important and relevant. And may I now come back to another point about modern life, and that is the question of sustainability. Today, you are seeing in Germany, in America, two countries that have produced manufacturing and pollution, and in China. China is today the largest polluter in the world. Sustainability has been forgotten in the race for expansion of individual income, per capita income. And in that race, what has happened is there has been a degrading of the natural resources. There's been an abuse of nature, and the consequences are now coming to roost in a major way, even in Germany and the United States. 10 years ago in the United States, maybe 10 years ago in Germany, people really thought, well, so what? I mean, we are producing a lot, we are manufacturing a lot, we are emitting a lot of gases in the atmosphere, so what? But today they realize, so what it means. It means nature coming back to hit them. And it means eventually, if we continue down this path, making this planet unsustainable. Now, some of us have great, regard for technology. I honestly believe, Satish, that possibly in the future, you are going to have a situation in which human beings can go into different planets and live in different planets. So if we make the Earth unsustainable or partly unsustainable, we may be able to find succor in a different planet. But that is not the answer. The point is, why should we make our Mother Earth unsustainable? Why should we damage and degrade and abuse nature? We should not do that. And this is one of the fundamental teachings of Mahatma Gandhi. These are teachings that have been there across the world. In the United States, the American Indian community was almost wiped out when the settlers came from Europe. They were wiped out because the settlers, for example, distributed blankets to them which are filled with smallpox, and a large number of the American Indian died of smallpox. Many more died of shooting. Many more died of starvation. But the Indian community in the United States understood the value of nature and the teachings of nature, with the result that today in the United States, the teachings of the Indian community, of the American Indian community, in the United States of 300, 350, 400, 500, 600 years ago, are now once again being looked at, once again being relearned, and once again sought to be practiced in life, because people are now accepting the reality of the impact of an unsustainable lifestyle on the planet. Now, you have two entirely contrasting opinions of two particular leaders. One is Mahatma Gandhi, the other is Deng Xiaoping of China. Mahatma Gandhi said, there is nothing wrong in poverty. You can be poor, it's perfectly all right. And the country can be poor, but the country has immense soul force, and that is what is important. Deng Xiaoping said, no, to get rich is glorious. And you should all work hard, individually, to get as rich as you can. And he went on that track, which is the exact reverse of the Gandhian track. Now, I happen to believe, frankly, that each of us, at least in my case, in the case of some of the others in this audience perhaps, certainly in the case of tens of millions of citizens of our country, each of us can make the world more sustainable if we adjust our lifestyles just a little bit. Avoid waste just a little bit. Avoid consumption of various energy just a little bit. But this is possible. And now I'd like to come to the fundamental tenet, which is there, which has been referred to in that very generous introduction given to me. I frankly didn't recognize myself in that introduction. I don't think I'm anywhere near as good as the introduction that you heard. But yes, long ago, I did write a paper for Bar-Ilan University on a horizontal view of society. And what is meant by that is, each human being is the same as any other human being in essence. A vertical view of society is a society which is graded in superior, inferior, middle, etc. A horizontal view says we may be different from each other, sometimes very different from each other, but essentially we are all the same. We are absolutely the same, which is why, very frankly, anyone who has got a vertical view of society. For example, saying that billionaires are, more, if I may say so, more valuable, or they are more admirable than friends like Satish and myself, who are very far from that. Well, that is not true. In our own way, whether it is Professor Satish, whether it is the director, Sinha, whether it is all you friends here, all of us are valuable in our own in ways, and we're all of us, hopefully, thanks to the influence of Gandhiji on our thinking, trying to ensure that that value gets unlocked. There's no point in value if it is locked. For example, if you have some most beautiful art collection and you lock it up in a basement, of what value is it? If the art collection is there in a museum, which is free access, people go to that museum, it has immense value. So each of us has our own private art collection of valuable inputs, insights, knowledge that will be very helpful to the world. And we need to share that knowledge. And I think that, again, is one of the fundamental teachings of Mahatma Gandhi. Again, as I said, today is 2021, and I have very long in geopolitics. People sometimes abuse me. People sometimes praise me for being what I am. That is very much a part of the realist school of geopolitics. The idealist school is a wonderful school. I believe in ideals, but I cannot believe that it is wise to act as though the world is an ideal place. We had, for example, foreign policy, in the 1950s, which assumed that the world was an idealistic place. In fact, even after the 1962 war, India, Vijayalakshmi Pandit got up and demanded that China should take the seat then occupied by Taiwan in the UN Security Council. This is after the Chinese attack on the Indian border. The Indian delegate nevertheless stood up in the UNO and demanded that China should be admitted into a Security Council seat that in the years past had been offered to India by both the United States and Russia, but we declined on grounds of principle. Now, whether some of us would have taken that decision, maybe whether those who took the decision in hindsight would have taken that decision, I cannot say. But that was a very, if I may say so, a very idealistic view of the world. I have a slightly more, if I may say so, realistic view of the world. And in a realistic view of the world, we have to understand Mahatma Gandhi, one of the things that he did, which he believed in passionately all his life, was interfaith harmony, the unity of different communities. And I would like to say that I do not recognize any difference between different communities. To me, whether you're a Hindu or a Christian or a Muslim or a Sikh or a Jain or a Buddhist or any of the great faiths or even an atheist, you are the same. You're the same human being, and you have the same common DNA, which includes the Vedic, the Mughal, and the Western. But then you had this two-nation theory, that because people have two faiths, they're two different nations, which frankly cuts at the very root of our common humanity. And regrettably, the problem is that Mahatma Ji lost that argument, the country was partitioned. It is extremely unfortunate that the country was partitioned, but he lost that argument. So at the same time, we cannot help admiring him for the persistence with which he believed, but some of us may believe that possibly if his tactics were a little different, possibly this could have been avoided, but it was not avoided. And frankly, I regard the two-nation theory as totally absurd. To say that people, because they belong to different faiths, are two different nations is absolutely absurd, especially in today's world, a world where Mahatma Ji would have been extremely happy to be part of, which is a multicultural world. You go even to countries that have had an unfortunate past, like Germany. Multiculturalism is very much there. You go to the United States, you go to Britain, and I'm happy to say, in our own country, our own democracy, you have different streams coexisting peacefully, in harmony, working together, marrying together, and studying together. And I think that is the way it should be. That is the harmonious society envisaged by the Mahatma. It has taken in India, it came in 1947. Unfortunately, in some other countries, they took a different path. But today, increasingly, more and more countries are beginning to understand the importance of multiculturalism. And as I told you, I go to the United States a lot. Unfortunately, this COVID-19 pandemic and the restrictions have created a lot of problems on travel. I used to travel a huge amount now the travel is very restricted. But I'd like to say, if you go to Silicon Valley, and I've gone to Silicon Valley, I wanted to find out the formula. Why is Silicon Valley Silicon Valley? Why is it worth trillions of dollars? And, I was pleasantly surprised. I mean, for one thing, there are no, in a sense, people come at 3 o'clock in the morning, they do some software, after about 40 minutes, they leave, and in that 40 minutes, they turn out world-class software. You can make people come at 9 o'clock in the morning and leave at 5 o'clock. You can make people come dressed in a suit. One of the persons I saw coming in and producing that software and then vanishing, he said, I'm going fishing. Don't disturb me for the next 10 days. That software, they said, is worth hundreds of millions of dollars in 40 minutes. This gentleman came actually in track pants and a track suit and looked as though he had not had sleep for about 10 days or so. And certainly he had not had a shave for at least 5 days. But this is the guy who produced that hundreds of millions of dollars worth of software. And I've seen some locations where people come in suits and they come in fixed timings and they don't produce anything because it's knowledge, it's creativity. And knowledge and creativity need a certain degree of freedom, individual freedom in lifestyle, individual freedom in beliefs, individual freedom in diet, and so many other ways. Otherwise, you cannot create a knowledge society in the absence of these individual freedoms. And it's not a surprise that locations where you have a high degree of individual freedom are precisely the locations where the knowledge society really flourishes. Even in the Soviet Union, and Satish, I mean, you and I have tracked the Soviet Union quite extensively. Even in the Soviet Union, you had these scientist colonies. If you go to these scientist colonies, inside the scientist colony, they're all foreign items. And they would read any kind of book. Nobody would say this book is proscribed, this book. And they would say all kinds of things. I mean, they would make the most awful comments about the Politburo members. Why? Because they're scientists. And if you don't give them an atmosphere of freedom, they cannot produce creative science. So that atmosphere of freedom was there even in the Soviet Union. And I think that is going to trip China up big time, because I think that atmosphere of freedom, there was no political freedom, but there were some other freedoms. They're being taken away one by one. And I can't believe that China will continue its march in the knowledge economy as a consequence of in the way it is doing, which is cutting back from freedom after freedom. Luckily, in India, we are a democracy. And as a democracy, I can only say that freedom is an individual part of democracy. And that is a freedom of the individual, provided my freedom ends where somebody else's rights begin. And it's the right, essentially, to avoid hurt, etc., etc. I mean, I'm a vegetarian. I believe the vegetarian diet is the best diet. I'm glad many people across the world are becoming vegetarian. But I'm totally opposed to imposing vegetarianism through the police or imposing vegetarianism of any form through the law. You cannot impose, you cannot force feed idealism in people. Idealism has got to come from within. It cannot come from without. So while I'm a vegetarian, and I must confess, Satish, that very occasionally in the past, I used to take an occasional glass of red wine. Today, because of COVID, I mean, as part of that, the kind of paranoidal feelings that all of us have got about COVID, I have stopped that. But I don't see, again, prohibition. It is a great, very important. In my view, alcohol is definitely poisonous. I am not very happy that I've had this affinity to red wine. I mean, of course, these days I don't have it. I'm maybe using COVID as an excuse. But the reality is you cannot force people to adopt an abstemious lifestyle. Wherever I have gone, where there is prohibition, you have also got bootlegging, and you have also got supply of alcohol to those who want it. So the point I want to make is, Mahatma Ji wanted to use moral force, what is called in philosophy, as you all know, moral suasion, not the police, certainly not the colonial police of Gandhiji's time, and certainly, in my view, not the police of today, not the legal system and the police to try and enforce it in a way independent of one's own, if I may say so, one's own desire and wishes and understanding of what is a good lifestyle. Non-violence is a perfect lifestyle. A simple diet is a perfect lifestyle. A sustainable way of dealing with energy is a simple lifestyle. Although I must confess, I'm really hoping that in the next 5 or 10 years, you're going to have a situation in which power becomes almost free. You've got fusion energy, for example. You have nuclear fusion. I hope in India we develop it actively, because we have been pioneers in nuclear fusion. We need to develop that, because if that kind of energy comes, I can assure you, your electric bill will be, even if you put all the lights on, 50 rupees a month. Now, you have free oxygen in the world. I mean, nature is not charging you a price for oxygen. You've got free water in the world, you had. But today, you don't have that kind of water. Water has become a priced good. And even air has becoming a priced good, because at big cost, we have to set up, carbon entrapment mechanisms. We have to set up all kinds of mechanisms to ensure that the carbon footprint is removed. That should not happen, in the case, in these free goods. We have misused these free goods. We have squandered them. And as a consequence, we are facing shortages of them. So there again, a sustainable lifestyle comes in the picture very, very clearly. Now, if you look today at the present, technology, telemedicine, for example, you can have the best doctors in the world looking into your what problem you have, and you can have them going deep into you through electronic ways and understanding what is wrong inside your body, and then suggesting what needs to be done. Telemedicine can revolutionize medicine, and that's why I applaud Prime Minister Modi for his digitalization program, because digital India is the future of India. Digital India can empower the whole of India. I would like to see bandwidth spread across the 1.3 billion people of India. I'd like to see much faster bandwidth than I'm getting now. I'm always worried that something will happen to the bandwidth, and maybe to your relief, my talk will abruptly end. But the reality is that whether it's telemedicine, online education, now you look at economics, a subject which mine was economics, it's mathematical statistics. But the reality is that if you look at American economics textbooks, the primary textbook was written by a Nobel Prize winner, Paul Samuelson. In India, the primary textbooks are not written by Nobel Prize winners. They're not even written by well-known economists, or possibly even good economists. But the reality is the textbook is the foundation of knowledge for the child. The elementary textbook, the secondary textbook, and the best minds in the country should be writing those textbooks, as they are, for example, in countries where the knowledge economy is expanding very fast. We have a new education policy. That's a very welcome move. And I'm really glad that so many steps are being taken to move forward. I'm always, a bit of a person, as somebody said about Devegowda said about Sitaram Kesri, an old man in a hurry. I'm definitely an old man in a hurry. So I'd like to see these things come a little earlier. But I'm glad that these steps are taking place, because may I say one thing? Online education is the future. It is, everybody has got to be given the right to the best education, and online education can provide that. We have to ensure that those who believe that you can make billions of dollars by monopolizing online education should not do so. Online education should be disseminated and spread. And where necessary, the government can come in and make it so. Because use of online methods in telemedicine, in education, in peace building, in so many other ways is, I think, an important part of our future. I would only like to end by saying, I am very optimistic about the future of India. Why? Because I have taught in classrooms in Europe, I've taught in classrooms in China, I've taught in classrooms in the United States. I think the students that I've met in India are the best I have ever seen. I can tell you this very honestly, as a realist, as a social scientist who would like to present facts wherever possible. And Satish, I make a lot of prognostications. I very seldom give the source for that because I believe in protecting my sources. Sometimes people laugh at it when they are made, but then subsequently they turn out to be true. So I can tell you, I have never seen better people than India. And may I also say one thing? I have never seen any difference between students of one community and the other, one social group and the other, one income group and the other in terms of basic skills. But it's important. If we are true to Mahatma Gandhi, it's not just that on October 2, we go to to his resting place and his thing. We have to broad base and universalize healthcare, education, housing, and food. Food, a large extent that's happening. And one other good thing that is happening is a lot of government subsidies are now coming directly into bank accounts through bank accounts of hundreds of millions of people, which were not there in the past. So middlemen are excluded. This is all happening. It's all happening in front of us. It's not happening fast enough for some of us, but at least it's happening. So I am optimistic about the future of India, and I am very optimistic that were Mahatma Gandhi, I'm sure the immortal soul of Mahatma Gandhi, when he is watching what is happening in the country now, and with that soul he may be able to go into the future, I believe we have a much brighter future than we had in the past. And I think for that, we have to thank saints, thinkers, and if I may say so, philosophers of the caliber of the Mahatma, and hope that all of us can in some small way unlock the treasures each of us have to give to society. Essentially, the purpose of man is not to take and to grab. It is to give and to share. Thank you very much, sir.
Dr. Mahib, I think it is advisable at least 5 to 10 minutes. If any participant has any question to the sir, at least 5 minutes you give to the audience if they have any question to ask the distinguished speaker. If anybody has any queries, any question, any observations, you can address to the distinguished speaker, Professor Nalapat.
Hello, sir. Good afternoon.
Please go ahead.
My question is, digitization is the part of decentralization?
Yes, the point is very simple. The point is that if broadband is expanded and ability to use that broadband is expanded, if each of us can have access, for example, to, today, for example, this mobile phone, tomorrow, today it's already used for hundreds of uses. Tomorrow it will be used for thousands of uses because technology is making it so. And that is where this broad basing of technology is very important. And that is where this digital push that is there is extremely important. I would like to see digitalization of services. At one time, Hong Kong, not today's Hong Kong, because it's now much more controlled. And that is where I believe the Chinese state is going wrong. I think you're going to see a reversal of the growth story. I would like to see a situation in which a citizen from birth to death does not have to meet a single government officer. Not that there are no government officers, but then you can do everything online. And online methods will work. Unfortunately, a lot of the online systems today, they crash. A lot of the online systems are not accessible to many people. But once they stop crashing, and once they're accessed by many people, I think that's very important that we can do it. And I'd like to say one reason for this crash and all that. let's not assume that big is beautiful. Mahatma Gandhi correctly said that small is beautiful. As I said, I've gone to Silicon Valley. I've gone to Texas. I've gone to Maryland and Virginia in the United States. And I can tell you that the real future is belonging to the new Bill Gates, somebody who is looking at repeating what Bill Gates was doing and becoming big. And this time around, sharing more than the early tech entrepreneurs and tech trillionaires have done. So a lot of smaller companies are actually got better technology than the so-called large companies. And I think it's important to identify these smaller companies, ensure that they are given an ecosystem to produce in. And that is where Prime Minister Modi is talking of, Atmanirbhar Bharat, talking in terms of Startup India. And I think it's very important to create an ecosystem where you can have that. Because I can tell you, today's tech giants, at least where I have been in the United States, possibly are not going to be a tech giants of tomorrow. Today's tech giants in Taiwan are not going to be a tech giants of tomorrow. It will be some unknown engineer or computer specialist or someone like that who comes up with a brilliant idea and who works on it in his garage or possibly in his study and then makes it a billion dollar idea. So this is the point of the future. The point of the future is empowering the individual and trust the small. I'm not saying the big is bad. You need a combination of big, medium, and small. But don't ignore the small. The small is also important. And if you don't ignore the small, you are being true to the spirit of Mahatma Gandhi.
Thank you, sir. Hello. One more question. One more question.
Yes, can I have one more question then, please?
Online education is effect of child pornography. How can stop this?
Look, I can only say that I agree that there are some unfortunate situations that take place, but that cannot be classified as education. And may I say that you can block it for some time. You may be able to access it elsewhere. It is like alcohol. It is like so many things where you cannot. There are certain things where, of course, you need the laws. For example, harming people. For example, hard drugs like for example, heroin and all that. You have to use very tough methods to block that because that can be very addictive very quickly and have problems. But and of course, you have variations of that. But again, I would say there is no escape from the need for tens of thousands of social reformers to go out and try and reform society. Mahatma Ji went from village to village. He went from town to town. He conscientized 2-3 people at a time. And he did that over 60 and odd years of his life. So there is no escape from that hard path. My point is, you have laws against it, you have rules against it, you'll have VPNs, you'll have ways of blocking it. I fully agree it's an evil. I fully agree that nobody should access it. But the sad reality is we cannot ignore the fact that each of us, and if we claim to be in some way admirers of the Mahatma, each of us have to do our little bit to convince maybe 2 people, 3 people that this is not good. So that those people can convince others that this is not good. So I would say that is the way forward. Naturopathy, rather than, if I may say so, the surgical knife. The surgical knife, I'm not sure, works on society. Naturopathy, which is favored by Mahatma Gandhi, is the most effective instrument for social reform. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Mahip, unmute yourself. Mahip, unmute yourself and then extend the vote of thanks to sir and all. Mahip, unmute yourself.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. I stand before you to extend a vote of thanks to all of you and acknowledge your presence. On behalf of Center for Gandhi Studies, I would like to pay highest gratitude to Honorable Chief Guest, Professor Madhav Das Nalapat Sarji, who delivered distinguished lecture and enlightened us all. In fact, Center for Gandhi Studies considers it honor and privilege to have served with us. The entire session was based on comprehensive knowledge, nuances of quality research, scientific temper, and rational, with the unique vantage point of Indic tradition, Gandhiji and Gandhian perspective, his thoughts and ideas for the empowerment of entire humankind. By using Gandhiji self as the laboratory where he experiments with truth and non-violence as a pure scientist, finds a solution for the major problems now confronting humanity in the 21st century in post-COVID-19 world. The major focus of this lecture was to critically analyze the viability and pragmatic relevance of our Gandhian vista and vision in the present fast-changing and globalizing world. We must learn the significance of the vision tradition of India, from where Gandhiji ever derived his insight, intellect, and strength for his life mission, with the objective of shedding new light in resolving the human challenges of 21st century, as Honorable Professor Nalapat sir has opined and shared his views to inculcate and assimilate Gandhian views, Gandhiji, in our day-to-day life and progress. Sir, it was brilliant, outstanding. Lots to learn and pursue more advanced research and guidance for better lifestyle. We pay earnest gratitude to IGNOU administration, especially Honorable Vice Chancellor sir, respected Pro Vice Chancellor sir, Registrar sir, Honorable Director of School of Social Sciences, Professor Rasmi Sinha Madam, directors of various regional centers, and other members of administration who constantly encourage and are always very kind and helpful to us. Our special thanks to all the faculty members of IGNOU, especially distinguished scholars like Senior Professor Deva Singh Roy sir, Professor Ravindra Kumar sir, Subhangni ma'am, who despite their hectic work schedules have spared time for us and join the program. I must mention my deepest sense of appreciation, for I would like to take this opportunity to place on record our hearty thanks to all the course coordinators of our modular online programs under the able leadership of the program coordinator, Professor Satish Kumar sir, who played the pivotal roles in making this webinar a grand success. I would like to express my sincere gratitude to all the participants who logged in from across the globe to join this webinar, including our students who joined through YouTube, Facebook, and other multimedia platforms to listen to the brilliant speaker who are leaders in their respective domain. I would like to end on an optimistic note that you all will join a national webinar on Gandhi and the contemporary world organized by Center for Gandhi Studies on the auspicious occasion of Gandhi Jayanti, October 2nd, 2021, 11 a.m. We'll share the details about the academic ceremony very soon. Center for Gandhi and Peace Studies wishes you all a very happy and corona-free living ahead. Thank you so much. Jai Hind.
Dhanyavad. Namaskar.